Hello there. It's nice to have you here. In our last lesson, we looked at the words on list 9, where we saw words like unprecedented, slovenly, maudlin, and the rest of them. Today's lesson is on vocabulary list 10, and we're going to be looking at some words. The very first word we have on our list is vilify. Vilify. Now let's find out the parts of speech that this word belongs to before we look into the meaning, okay? Vilify is a verb and it means to speak or write slanderous statements against someone or something. It originated from the Greek word vilificare, okay? Now, if you speak about someone in a spiteful manner, what did you do? You have vilified the person's character. So, to speak about someone in a spiteful manner is to vilify. To tarnish someone's image is to what? Vilify. To damage the good reputation of others is to vilify. Okay. Now, to criticize harshly or to defame someone's character is to what? Vilify. Now, let's see the synonyms for vilify. They include berate, defame, smear, malign, slander, etc. The list is endless, okay? Let's see how this word can be used in sentences. Why are people so quick to vilify those on the other side of an issue? Why is he always trying to vilify my reputation? Don't forget that we said vilify means to slander someone, to defame, to smear. Okay? Let's move on to number 2, ubiquitous. Ubiquitous. Let's find out what it means. The first thing you need to know is that ubiquitous is an adjective and it means present, appearing, or found everywhere. Can you think of one person that can be found everywhere? I can think of one, and he is the Almighty God. Okay, let's see where this word originated from. It originated from the Latin word ubique, which means everywhere. Ubique, everywhere. To be widely or constantly encountered is what? Ubiquitous. To exist everywhere or to involve everyone else is ubiquitous. The synonyms of the word. The first one we have is omnipresent. We most times hear in church that our God is an omnipresent God. That means our God is everywhere. Is ubiquitous, right? Universal. Everywhere. Very common. Ever present. An ever-present person is a ubiquitous person. Let's see how the word can be used in sentences. I have sugar is ubiquitous in the diet. Restaurants are ubiquitous these days. Churches are ubiquitous these days. Churches are everywhere just as restaurants are everywhere. Let's move on from here to number 3, traumatic. Traumatic. What does traumatic mean? The first thing we need to know is that it is an adjective and it is the second adjective in our list. Don't forget that the first adjective that we came across was ubiquitous. Traumatic is the second adjective in list 10 and it means very disturbing or shocking. It is related to the Greek word trauma, meaning wound. Okay? If something leaves you struggling with upsetting emotions that won't go away, we will say that thing is what, class? It is traumatic. If it is more than one can bear, if it is more than what you can bear, it is what? Traumatic. Now, let's see the synonyms of the word. The first one is unpleasant. Something that is traumatic is always unpleasant. Troublesome. It disturbs you, your peace of mind. Unbearable. You can no longer withstand it. Upsetting. And of course, disturbing. All these are the synonyms of what? Traumatic. Okay, let's move on to how this word can be used in sentences. His son's death was the most traumatic event of his life. His son's death was the most traumatic event of his life. Death is something that, the kind of pain it leaves is something that you cannot even begin to imagine. It's always a traumatic experience. Even with the fact that you will not see this person again, it's not something that is nice. It's not something that anyone should even see or witness. Okay? Now the second sentence is, she had been through a very traumatic experience. That means this person has been through a lot, a devastating, an agonizing, a shocking experience. Let's move on from traumatic to the next word, succumb. Succumb. What does it mean? Succumb is a verb, and it happens to be the second verb in our list 10. The first verb we came in contact with was vilify. Succumb is the second verb. It means to fail to resist peer pressure, temptation, or some other negative forces. It can equally mean to lose the determination to oppose something or to accept defeat. This word derives its origin from the French word succomber, meaning to fall down or to yield. Okay, now let's move on from here. To surrender again is to what? Succumb. To surrender is to succumb. Like when you sing in church, I surrender all. You're succumbing to God's will, right? Okay? To surrender is to succumb. To cave in is to succumb. Let's look at the synonyms of the word. We have to surrender, 1. To cave in, 2. To be overwhelmed, 3. And to give in as 4. Let's move on from here to how this word can be used in sentences. He will succumb to defeat means he will yield to defeat. He will give in to defeat. He will cave in to defeat. Even good leaders eventually succumb to the pressure of the ruling class. It's like a child in class that doesn't want to be noisy, but happens to have people around him or other that are so noisy. It gets to a point, if the child is not firm, the child will succumb and start making noise like them. Okay? See this picture. I'm sure this child was actually trying to read, but succumbed to sleep. Probably she was tired. Now that's one thing I don't want you to do. Don't stop doing your assignments or going through your content pages or going through your videos because you're tired. No. We know it's not easy, but you keep doing it. Okay? You would only stop when you are done with the work. So please don't succumb. Okay? We have plethora. Plethora. It means a large quantity, something that is excessive, surplus, over abundance. Let's find out where this word originated from. It is a noun that originated from a Greek word, plethora, meaning fullness. It is a noun that originated from a Greek word, plethora, meaning fullness. Okay? Now let's find out more about this. A large amount of something is plethora. An overabundance of something is plethora. Look at this space. Overabundant. It's everywhere. The birds are everywhere. It's countless. You can't even begin to imagine the total number we have here. Okay? Now, let's see the synonyms of the word. I have over, sufficient, surplus, surfeit, excess, over, abundance. All these are synonyms of the word plethora. Okay? How can this word be used in sentences? There are a plethora of vocabulary virtuosos lessons here. That means if I pick up my book, I have an endless list of lessons on vocabulary virtuoso. A plethora of new marketers will be allowed to enter the market. Okay? And then this, I know some of you are already salivating. Don't worry, it will get to you. If you do well in my vocabulary virtuosos assignments, I may just consider you and send this to you as your reward. Okay, let's move on from here to the next word, rancor. Rancor. Now let's find out the parts of speech that this word belongs to and the meaning of the word. Rancor. It originated from the late Latin word rancorem, which means grudge. Rancor is a noun, and it is best described when one is talking about not just any anger, not I don't like what you did to me today. We're supposed to go out to eat together. You just left me. I'm not happy with you. I waited for you yesterday and you could not even wait for me today. I'm not talking about that kind of anger. We're talking about a deep, twisted, bitter type of anger in one's heart. So when you hear this type, you know it's rancor. Okay? Intense dislike or hate, not just I dislike, intense dislike or hate is rancor. A bitter and long-lasting hatred is rancor. Bitter and long-lasting hatred is what? Rancor. Now let's look at the synonyms of the word. Animosity, vengeful, bitterness, hostility. All these are synonyms of the word rancor. Now, how do we use it in a sentence? It was a fanatic's wish to stir up religious rancor. What am I saying? It is a fanatic's wish to stir up religious animosity, religious hostility. Sentence 2 says, I could almost see the rancor in his eyes when he challenged me to a fight. It's the same thing as saying, I could almost see the bitterness. I could almost see the bitterness, the hostility, the hatred, the malice in his eyes when he challenged me to a fight. Okay? What do you think is going on here? It's easy to tell because you already know what rancor means. Moving on to the next word, we have neophyte. Neophyte. Again, we'll look at for the parts of speech that this word belongs to and its meaning. Neophyte. What does it mean? First of all, you need to know that neophyte is a noun and it means someone who is new to a subject or an activity. At a point in time, you were a neophyte. I was equally one. Why? Because at that point in time, we were new to a particular subject or to a particular activity. So now that we're no longer new to it, that we've gotten used to it, we will no longer call ourselves neophytes. But if you're new to it, you're a what? A neophyte. Okay, let's continue. The word traces back through late Latin to the Greek word neophytes, meaning newly planted or newly converted. So when someone asks you, are you a neophyte in this? You won't look dazed anymore because you already know what it means, right? Okay, let's continue with our lesson. A beginner, like I said, is a neophyte. You know, I said someone that is new to something. So a beginner is new, right? So a beginner is a neophyte. A novice is a neophyte. An apprentice is a neophyte. Let's assume that mommy has a shop where she sews clothes. Those people that come to learn how to sew from our apprentice, and they are neophytes because they are not good at it. They are learning how to be good at it. Okay, now let's move on from here. The synonyms of the word, we've already seen some: a beginner, a learner, a novice, a newcomer, an apprentice. They are all examples of neophyte, synonyms of the word neophyte. Okay, now let's continue. How can this word be used in sentences? Don't forget that the word again means someone that is new at something. Someone that is new at something. Now, how can this word be used in sentences? Let's look at it. I can say, a person who is new to a subject or an activity is a neophyte. Let's imagine that I'm kind of stranded. That's the definition of my word, right? I can equally use it as a sentence. He is a neophyte at politics. Means he's a beginner. He's new at the game of what? Politics. The neophyte began to stammer out a reply but fell silent. So all these are examples of sentences on it. Now look at this. Look at this illustration. I know how this works. Do you think a beginner would say this? I know how this works. A beginner may not say this, but a beginner would say, I wonder how this works, because he or she doesn't know it yet, right? I know how this works, not a beginner. I wonder how this works, a beginner. Okay, so that person can be called a what? A neophyte. So let's continue with our lesson. The next word is steadfast. The next word is what? Steadfast. Now let's find out the past of speech that this word belongs to. Steadfast. Steadfast is an adjective and it means resolutely or dutifully firm and unwavering. Nothing moves a steadfast person. Nothing shakes them. The origin of the word traces back to Old English word steadfast, a combination of stead meaning place and fast meaning firmly. Okay? Now, to be devoted means to be steadfast. If you're devoted to coming out top, to being the best, to making your parents proud, to studying hard, I would say you are what? A steadfast child. Okay? To be committed. To be committed means to be what? To be steadfast. So if you're committed to doing all the assignments that you'd see this term in vocabulary virtuoso, in the other subjects, I can say you are steadfast, right? Okay, now let's continue. The synonyms of the word: devoted, 1; dedicated, 2; committed, 3; faithful. All these are synonyms of the word steadfast. How do we use them in sentences? Her steadfast belief never left her for 1 minute. He remained steadfast in his plea of innocence. And no matter the pain, the torture, whatever it is I was going through, he kept on maintaining the same thing, that is what? Innocent. So he remained steadfast in his plea of innocence. Okay, now let's move on from here and look at this space. What is behind this young lady? Could actually be problems, tribulations, whatever it is that you want to think of. But she's unwavering. She's not even bothered about what is going on around her. She's just focused on where she's going to. That is the kind of mindset that you should have. Don't get bothered that, the assignments are becoming too much. The content pages. I need to go through this video. I need to do this. No. In the midst of all that, you keep telling yourself that I won't stop because I'm tired. I will stop when the work is done. If you can do that, we would say you are steadfast. Okay? Now let's move on from here and go to the next word, paltry. A paltry means something that is really small. So small that it is utterly worthless, utterly insignificant. Now, the word is an adjective. That's the first thing you need to know. It is an adjective and it originates from the Middle Low German paltrig, which means ragged or worthless. When something is small, we will say it is what? Paltry. So take note of that. When something is insufficient in quantity or amount, we would say it is what? Paltry. Imagine you coming home from a very busy day, probably at school, and then coming back home from school, you're so hungry, and mom tells you, welcome baby, your food is on the dining table. And then you go there with all the excitement in this world, only for you to open the plate and wow, this is what you see. You already know that this thing cannot help you in any way because your stomach is already biting. You want to eat. I know you won't consider this a food, right? Okay? So when something is insufficient in quantity or amount, we will say it is what? Paltry. The synonyms of the word: insignificant, worthless, scanty, small. All these are the synonyms of the word paltry. Okay, now let's see how this word can be used in sentences. She made some paltry excuse and left. Meaning she made some worthless excuse, probably insignificant excuse, and left. Last year, workers were offered a paltry raise of 2%. They added to their money, but what they added was so small that it became insignificant, worthless. It's like somebody earning 5,000 naira. Then you tell the person, I'm giving you a raise, and you add 5 naira to it. What's that? It's worthless, right? It's a paltry raise. Okay, let's move on from here to incorrigible, which happens to be the next word we have. Incorrigible. Incorrigible. It is an adjective and it means something that is difficult to control. It's firmly rooted and it's what? Unreformable. Unreformable. You can't reform. You can't change that thing or person. It is from the Latin word incorrigibilis, meaning not to be corrected. Have you ever come in contact with people like that? They are always right. You cannot correct them. They know it all. Okay? Now let's move on from here. When someone is unapologetic, apologize. No, I won't. I don't see any reason for it. I did not. Even when deep down inside the person knows that what I did is wrong. I need to apologize. They are unapologetic. People like that are what? Incorrigible. When someone is unreformable, we say the person is what? Incorrigible. Now, let's look at the synonyms of the word. Unrepentant. They are not willing to change their ways. Unreformable. They don't want to change. Just leave them the way they are. There's nothing you will say that will make them change. Not able to change. All these are examples of the word. They're examples of the synonyms of the word incorrigible. Die hard. Hey, there is nothing you tell them. If your mind is fixed on this, that's what they're looking at. Okay? Now let's move on from here and find out how these words can be used in sentences. Incorrigible. Are you so incorrigible that you cannot be good for 20 minutes? What? Why are you incorrigible? Why are you incorrigible? It's the same thing as saying, Why are you hardened? Why are you difficult to control? You understand? Okay, let's move on to angst. Angst. What does angst mean? Let's find out. Okay? Angst is that feeling of insecurity, unease. That feeling of insecurity, unease, persistent worry over something that is what? Trivial. It is that feeling of insecurity, unease, persistent worry over something that is what? Insignificant. It is a noun. That's another thing you should take note of. And the word originated from the German word Angst and the Dutch word Angst. So take note of this. The important thing you need to take note of is the fact that the word is a noun and that it is that feeling of insecurity, unease, that persistent worry about something that is so trivial. Now, most of you must have actually been doing this at some point in time, but you didn't know that there was a word for it. Okay, let's move on. Be careful that I think they can sense the fear. Same thing as saying what? I think they can sense the angst, because angst equally means what? Fear, persistent worry. The synonyms of the word fear comes in first. Apprehension, you're apprehensive. Unease, insecurity. All these are synonyms of the word angst. Now let's see how they can be used in sentences. The angst vanished from her face and voice when she was told that she came first in the just concluded exams. This thing happens to kids a lot. Actually, those kids that are already used to taking first, and then they write this exam that is so difficult that they don't even know what their position is going to look like. They worry till the day they see their results. They do. So I can say the angst vanished from her face and voice when she was told that she came first in the just concluded exams. I know they can sense her angst. Same thing as saying what? I know they can sense her fears. I know they can sense her apprehension. I know they can sense her. Just keep going on. Persistent worry, unease, fear, insecurity. That's what the word angst means. Look at this young lady. It's easy to tell that she is worried. Why else would she just be staring into the space or the air? Okay, in number 12, I have demagogue. Demagogue. A demagogue is a political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular desires rather than using rational arguments. A demagogue is a political leader who seeks support by appealing to popular desires rather than using rational arguments in any situation. They just appeal to popular desires. Okay, the word is from a Greek word demagogos. Demos meaning people, and then agogos meaning leading. Okay, we have synonyms of this word as agitator, a firebrand, a rabble-rouser. All these are the synonyms of demagogue: firebrand, agitator, a rabble-rouser. Okay, I can say, unless he is to some extent a demagogue, he cannot be a poet. Unless he is to an extent a demagogue, he cannot be a politician. They are used to saying words. Seek support by popular desires rather than rational arguments. Okay, so this is where we call it a day for list 10. Please try as much as you can to go through this video again if you're lost in any part. Okay, now I have an activity for you, and this activity I'd want you to do it in the notes section in your portal. Now You would pick any word of your choice from list 1 to 9. That's if you're old people. But if you're new, pick any word of your choice from list 9 and analyze it. Tell me everything I need to know about it. But do that in your notes section on the portal. I will go through it and pick my best analyst for the week. Okay? So till list 11 comes your way, it is bye for now.